Hi there, and in today's episode I'm going to be talking all about closing. It's super important, but why is it not working for you? So quite often I talk to people who are looking to support their sales team in closing more business. And in fact, the comment quite often is, they're great, they just can't close. To me, quite often that's actually symptomatic of the fact, not that they can't close, but actually that there's a problem somewhere else in their sales process. Because let's be honest, closing is simply saying, so do you want it? So I suspect you and your sales team don't actually have a problem with that question. What you actually have a problem with is people saying no. And people saying no is quite often down to completely different things. And so often one of the things that I see is that really, if people are saying no by the time you get to the point of close, then you haven't actually done a great job on your sales conversation. And the reason for that is because if you've done a great job on your sales conversation, then you know that they're already going to say yes. So the first thing to think about is that if you're having problems closing, it's probably not about your close. It's probably about your conversation. Now, there's loads of stuff I could tell you about having a great sales conversation, but what I want to do today is give you one little tip that's going to help you identify if this sale is actually going to close or not. And I'm always amazed that more people don't use this because it's a fantastic way of actually testing the waters and checking where you are in the conversation and in that sales process with your prospect. And that's to simply take the temperature. So how do you take the temperature of your sale? So what's taking the temperature all about? What it's really doing is it's giving your prospect the opportunity to respond to the conversation that you've been having with what their thoughts are about what you've shared. What's really nice about this is it's a kind of question that's very open and it's allowing them to share their thoughts. That's helpful to you because you now know exactly what they like, what they don't, and what they're thinking about, which allows you to respond. That's why it's so helpful doing this before you think about going into the close. Because if people are going into that close and they still have doubts, questions, uncertainties, then you're not going to get a yes. So how do you take the temperature? Really simple, you just ask a couple of questions. So there's different ways you can do this, but I have 3 questions that I like to use, and you can use one or all of these. The first question is to ask people what questions they have about what you've discussed so far. What's really nice about that is when you say what questions, people start to think, well, what questions do I have? So that becomes an opportunity to flush out any concerns, any objections, anything they're worried about or just not sure about. So you definitely want to do that before you go in and ask for the sale. The second question I like to ask is, how does that sound? And what's really nice about that is, again, I'm not leading them to any answer. It's a very open question. And what that's really allowing is for them to say, that sounds really great. Or to say, well, it sounds good. There's just one thing. Either way, you know what you need to do. If it's a, that sounds great, that's amazing, because guess what? They're now going to tell you why it sounds amazing, which means they're selling it themselves. And they are likely to be a better salesperson than you in talking themselves into your proposition. If they still have doubts, then this is probably the time they're going to tell you. And the brilliant thing about that is that then you can start dealing with as an objection. There's a video which I'll link to down below that's going to show you exactly how to handle any objection. So you're ready and you've dealt with that before you go to that close. The third thing that you can ask is my favorite, and I love this question. Quite often I might even ask the other 2 questions first and then run to this question. The reason I like this question is it gets people to start to think about the future. What would life be like if I did this? What would my business look like? What would my life look like? What would my team look like? All of these things start to go round in their head. And the way that you can prompt that is simply by asking, how would that work for you? It's a great way of getting them to describe what life would look like with your solution in place. And this is really nice because what it shows is they're now evaluating it in the context of their own business. That's super helpful because what it means is they're no longer looking at it as an abstract proposition. They're now looking at it as something which is alive, well, and kicking within their own business. How would the team react? What challenges could they see? So on and so forth. It's a great way of getting them to start to forward think about this. And this again also starts to throw up very real questions around things like, well, how would we implement it? Oh, who would do that? How long would that take? That's fantastic because these are all questions which show that that person is on the way to buying with you. The other thing is about these questions is what they're really giving you is permission to continue. So what they're really saying, if you get positive responses to these questions and or if you get negative responses that you then objection handle, then you're ready to proceed. And that's a great time to actually get into your little summary pitch and ask your close questions. The difference is now you know that you can expect the answer that you're looking for. So how do you actually close? To be honest with you, I think a lot of people get really wound up about this. Closing is just asking. It's just saying, so do you want it? And in fact, I've even closed business before by saying, so come on then, do you want it? And you know what? That's all we're doing when we're closing. We're saying, do you want it? Do you want to proceed? Is this something you're interested in? Are we going to make this happen? So there's lots of different questions or lots of different ways that you can position this. You may know that my favorite way of doing this is by giving options. So would you prefer X or Y? And literally at that point they can go, I prefer Y, and I'll go, great, I'll get that invoice straight out to you. It's a lovely way to close, especially as quite often in real life, we are giving our prospects a choice between option A and option B. Another great way to do it is just to use something that makes sense. So you could say, look, from everything we've talked about, it makes sense that we go ahead with option A. In order to do that, I'll just need to get the diary out and let's see what dates we can get booked in. So it's quite assumptive, and I'm saying, I'm reiterating, so from everything we've said, it makes sense, let's get it in the diary. There are loads of different ways of doing it, but I think the point is don't get too hung up on it. Closing is simply saying, so do you want it? It's never going to work if the person isn't already bought in. So to me, focus on that temperature check, focus on the objection handle, and focus on really showing your value. And as long as you do a great job with all of that, then you'll find that little close is super simple. What's your favourite close question? I'd love to know. Why don't you drop it in the comments? So that's all from me for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, then remember to hit the button to subscribe and ding the bell to be notified when next time I upload. And until then, just remember to be sales-tastic.